to the Board of Adjustment at their meeting actually last Wednesday. Staff did recommend approval, even though that single family language is in there. The Board of Adjustment still had the opportunity to grant a variance, even though the language in there did not specifically mention duplexes. They technically have the right as a Board of Adjustment to grant variances where they see fit on those types of requirements. So with that, they did approve variances to both the minimum lot size requirements and the minimum width requirement. On top of that, then Mr. Carpenter, as part of his variance request, did ask for the side setback variance. We did ask for that, Mr. Carpenter asked for that mainly so then if that was approved, he could amend his rezoning request from changing to the R3 zoning district to the R2 zoning district, because the discussion that we had here last month was most of the area around this development, or these lots were already zoned R2. So we would have a little bit more uniformity with zoning district regulations if this was an R2 request. The Board of Adjustment did approve that side setback variance request, and as such, then Mr. Carpenter did amend his rezoning request to the R2 district. So with that, again, the variances have been approved on that. The rezoning request has changed from C2 to R3 to now C2 to R2 to better match what is out there, and as such, again, staff is recommending approval of this rezoning request, noting that the variances are in place. And if there are any questions of me, I would be happy to answer them at this time.
Does anybody have any questions for Charlie? Okay, if there's none for Charlie, the applicant is also here if there's any questions for the applicant. Okay, if no one has any questions or discussion, I guess I would entertain a motion at this point, as there's nothing further to discuss. Does anybody want to bring forward a motion?
I'll put a motion forward. I recommend rezoning request be approved as submitted. This is Pribble.
Jeremy, do I have a second?
This is Joe, second.
First and a second. Any further discussion after that motion and second? All right, Courtney.
Misty Soldish,
Yes.
Joe Butler,
Yes.
Al Ferris,
Yes.
Freeberg, yes, Megan Needles,
Yes.
Bob Ormsby,
Yes.
Jeremy Preble,
Yes.
Sarah Ritchie,
Yes.
Josh Ray.
Yes. Ben, thanks for coming down.
Well,
Uh,
made that easy. It was much better than last week.
Perfect.
Right?
Have a good night, Ben.
Take care. Moving on to the next agenda item, 7A, consider recommendation on request for alternative method of approval for a site plan for Vice Construction located at 2500 West 2nd Avenue. Charlie?
Yeah, thank you. Vice Construction does propose to build a storage building, associated parking, and is also including a stormwater detention basin to its approximately 3-acre parcel located at 2500 West 2nd Avenue. They have submitted a site plan, which does show a approximately 165 foot by 60 foot, just under 10,000 square foot storage building. That will utilize partially existing gravel parking that is currently located in the rear yard, but will add additional gravel parking to kind of, again, have the parking area in front of the entire building. The building's going to stretch back into an area that's currently in vegetation. And again, also will add a stormwater detention basin on the north edge of this property to help better control stormwater in the area. Section 166.04 of the site planning standards does require that all parking lots and accesses shall be hard surfaced. We note this requirement generally is there to help with the aesthetics of the city, to control runoff of gravel into the city's storm sewers, and then create uniformity in parking surfaces throughout the city. We did note that, again, the site currently utilizes approximately 3,600 square foot of existing gravel parking adjacent to where the improvements are proposed. The applicant is proposing to use this gravel parking and add another 10,000 square feet of additional gravel parking. The above property currently matches all adjacent and surrounding properties and what it does, where most of the front and side yards are paved and then the rear yards do contain gravel. We note that, again, while not to code, the current conditions do help with the aesthetics of the highway corridor and continues to provide a majority of customer parking on hard surface areas. One thing staff does like about this site plan is it does include detention in this area. However, we do have concern if there is going to be gravel added to the rear portion of this yard, that gravel could over time inundate that detention basin and create some issues with there. We've provided, based off what our engineers telling us and our public works director has given us some direction on, some alternatives that can be considered to help alleviate that gravel from washing into the detention basin. Two things that our engineer noted was the use of filtration strips that could retain gravel particles prior to be deposited in the basin. Those strips could be dense vegetation cover or ditch checks. So with that, staff is recommending alternative 2, approving this alternative method of site plan approval with the condition that those filtration strips be added, which could either include dense vegetation cover or ditch checks. Those be added before the detention basin to help control that gravel runoff. And again, just want to stress our recommendation of approval on this does come off just the aesthetic portion of it. We do have paved lots in the front and side yards of these buildings, so that aesthetic portion of the intent of the code is still being met. So with that, if there are any questions on this one, I'd be happy to answer them.
Yeah, does anybody have anything for Charlie?
Charlie, this is Joe. Two things. Can you give us an approximate distance off of the highway corridor that this gravel would start? And then also confirm, I believe it is, but please confirm that it's mainly shielded by existing buildings as well. Screen.
Let me answer your second question. Yes, definitely that is the case. And if you give me 1 second here, that is the case, that it is shielded by existing buildings. But just give me 1 second here and I can give you the distance. I just need to measure it out. So from the right-of-way line back to the parking area right now is about 225 feet. The right-of-way line itself from the road is probably another 50 feet, but let me check this here. Yeah, it's about 50 feet. So if you go from the edge of the road, it's about 275 feet.
Thanks, Charlie. Because of those two things, I think this makes a lot of sense, but I do agree with the infiltration items that have been brought up as well.
If I recall, I believe we approved a similar situation for FS a few years ago, didn't we?
That's my recollection, Bob, as well. That was one of the ones I was thinking about.
Yeah, before my time, obviously, I could double check on that, but I don't know right off the top of my head, no. Do you have an idea when that would have been? I can check minutes real quick.
1 to 5 years ago.
Might take me a little bit more, so.
It was a very similar, they were doing an addition of metal building, I believe, towards the back.
Yeah.
It was a very similar situation.
I agree with that, Bob. I remember that.
And the neighbors out there have gravel.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
No, it's definitely like for the area. And again, taking care of the detention is going to be a nice thing out there. Does anybody else have any questions or comments on this one? If no one does, it's your last chance. There's no one else here. I would entertain a motion on this then.
I'll make a motion to approve based on staff recommendation for the stormwater.
Bob, do we have a second?
Second, this is Sarah.
Okay, she can second.
Sarah, we're gonna give you that one.
Okay.
All right, we have a first and a second before we take a roll call. Any other further questions, discussion here? All right, Courtney?
Joe Butler,
Yes.
Al Ferris,
Yes.
Eric Stevens.
Yes. Yes.
Bob Ormsby,
Yes.
Jeremy Preble,
Yes.
Sarah Ritchie,
Yes.
Josh Ray,
Yes,
Misty Solowich.
Yes.
perfect. Agenda item 8, is there any commission general comments for Charlie or everybody?
If I may.
Al's back in the house, guys. Let's go for it, Al.
Well, it relates back to the first item tonight and the language that I guess indicates that if the property is platted prior to the development of the ordinance, then it's kind of grandfathered in. What bothers me is it says the effective date of adoption or amendment of this chapter. Now, does that mean that if that chapter is amended, that it resets to 1999 or
yeah.
2002 or?
It would depend on what change the amendment made. So, for example, let's say you have a vacant lot and we'll throw a date out here. Let's say zoning was adopted in the city in 1950. In 1950, it said you had to have an 8,000 square foot lot, and that was an 8,000 square foot lot. And then in 2010, we changed it to say, oh no, now you have to have a 7,000 square foot lot. Anything that was 8,000 square foot before 2010 would essentially be grandfathered in. Same thing, if we were to make a change tomorrow on something that would have that type of effect on it, it would essentially be grandfathered in. So it's not adoption, the first adoption of the zoning ordinance, it's adoption of the actual amendment that would make the change that it grandfathers it in. And that has a lot to, does that make sense?
No.
Well, what it has a lot to
confused
do
now.
with is you get into takings in a lot of situations, and what you need to be, what zoning codes do is they protect themselves a little bit to make sure that you're not taking any real estate value away from a piece of property by creating a regulation that then essentially makes it unbuildable. So if you bought a lot in 1950 that was a buildable lot, you bought that for a price based off the buildability of that lot. The city can't then create a zoning regulation that says, okay, no way, this is no longer buildable anymore, because that takes away value from your lot.
Okay.
So essentially it's a taking that you could then sue the city and most likely come out on top. So does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
sometimes it
I
takes a
just
lot of, yeah, it's sometimes can get very complicated, and some of these issues do take a lot of research. The good thing on this one, we couldn't really find the adoption, or excuse me, the year the subdivision was platted, but based off the year that the homes were built, you could assume it was early 1900s. And then, as I think I mentioned in the staff report, the state of Iowa didn't even enact zoning until 1923. So you're able to draw some assumptions there that these lots were platted without zoning. Zoning then went in effect that created the lots to be unbuildable.
So my house was built in 1896, so I'm pretty much free to do whatever, huh?
In a sense, on those legally established non-conforming lots, based off a few things, yeah, I mean, there are things, again, you have an existing house there, and if, let's say, your house gets damaged to an extent where it needs to be rebuilt, you would possibly then still have to meet current regulations, but then that's where the variances come in place to say, okay, if you can't meet those current regulations, we need to be a little bit flexible on it. So, which is essentially why a Board of Adjustment is set up.
Okay. I don't plan to do that, but I'm just
And hopefully
curious
nothing
because I
happens
can
to
see
the house.
where that might come along, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Just clarification.
Anybody else? Right? Charlie, Courtney, you guys have any?
Other than the updates, obviously, that we gave you, if there's any questions on those, happy to answer them. And then wanted to mention two things. I emailed everybody today regarding our comp plan receiving the Daniel Roram Award from the Iowa chapter of the American Planning Association. So that's great for us. Even better for you guys. You guys spent a lot of time on going through this comp plan and getting it passed on to council for adoption. So appreciate all your help on that and be proud of it because that's a pretty good accomplishment. On that, council most likely on Monday, as long as we can get a few things taken care of tomorrow, we'll be reviewing the Quail Meadows 3 subdivision, which I know was reviewed, I think, back in July by the commission. So it's been a long time going on that, but just wanted to highlight that because that's going to be when passed, that'll be the 116th lot that we final platted this year. And that's a pretty good accomplishment. We look back actually in the past 8 years, and in the past 8 years, we only did 191. So to do 116 this year alone is a really good accomplishment. And hopefully, you plat the lot first, then you have building permits come next. We're going to be close to 100 building permits for dwellings this year, which is a really good goal a really good milestone to hit. And next year we should be well above that as well too, just with the lots that we're final platting this year. So just wanted to make sure that the commission was aware of that because that's a lot of your hard work and going and reviewing these plats finally coming to fruition. So appreciate everything you guys do.
Thanks, Charlie. Right back at you, I think. I feel good about it. All right. Nobody else has anything? I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Misty Solbrush, motion to adjourn.
Steve, second.
Second.
Oh, got it. Perfect. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All right. Y'all
Thanks,
have a good
everybody.
night. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.